Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is the latest edition of Late to the Party, a series of streams, an ongoing series of streams that I do for my newsletter, Astrolabe, which you can see right up there, where I play old video games, usually Japanese RPGs, sometimes ones I've played before, sometimes ones I haven't, sometimes ones that are great, like the game we're playing today. Sometimes games that aren't so good, like Seventh Saga from a few issues ago. I let my Twitter users pick the game I'm going to play. I spend an hour playing it on my lunch break, and then write about it in Astrolabe, my regular newsletter about kind of geekdom. You can see right up there, I have a new address for Astrolabe. It's astrolabe.aidenmoher.com. Astrolabe has a new home, but it's still free to sign up for. And each official issue of Astrolabe comes with a late to the party entry about an old retro video game. So I think if you like the stream, if you like Illusion of Gaia, you're really going to like Astrolabe and what it has to offer. So we're going to kick things off here. Can anyone tell me, on my end, it looks like my video, my webcam is lagging pretty heavily. Is that what you're seeing as well? It's like quite a bit behind my my voice. So Illusion of Gaia is the second in a kind of loosely gathered trilogy of action RPGs by Japanese developer Quintet called the Heaven and Earth Trilogy. The first one is Soul Blazer, which is fairly popular among people. I've never personally played it outside of the first half hour or so. Second is Illusion of Gaia. It was released in 1993 for the Super Nintendo. It came out in Japan and overseas. And then there was Terranigma, which was the third one, which is excellent. And we're having a lot of audio issues. And Terranigma was released in Japan and Europe, but never came over to North America. I never got a 60 hertz, an official 60 hertz English version. And so I played it a number of years ago, but you have to use a hack, a ROM hack, to get the English version to play at 60 hertz on American hardware, and so that it just runs at a more reasonable frame rate. But today we're playing Illusion of Gaia. It's fun because it's sort of set in our world. It's obviously like a fictionalized version of our world, but we do visit a lot of real world locations. And let's get started. Hey Ben, thanks for coming by, even if you can just drop by for a second. Illusion of Gaia is one of my all-time favorite games. I think it holds up really nicely. The localization is very bad, but everything else about it is really nice. It does a lot of really heavy lifting narratively with its visuals, with its especially with its music and its sound design, and it kind of has this really melancholy atmosphere that I just can't really think of any other game that matches the same feeling as Illusion of Gaia. And I really admire it for that. I don't know how much we'll see of that in this playthrough, but it's definitely a game that stands on its own. Despite the bad localization, you get a lot of that feeling of melancholy. So I played this a lot as a kid, and then recently played through it my Super NES Classic, and really enjoyed it. One of the things that just really stands out to me about Illusion of Gaia is it's a 1993 Super Nintendo game, so it's around the same time as Secret of Mana, and I would say it definitely falls into that same category as Secret of Mana, Legend of Zelda. It's different and structured in its own way, but I'm just constantly struck by how gorgeous it is. Like it stands out amongst a lot of its contemporaries visually. Big sprite works, gorgeous pixel art design to the world, really big and chunky level design. I just think it's really beautiful, even more so than its sequel Terranigma, which came out a couple of years later. I think Illusion of Gaia still looks better than that one, and you can stand it up against any of the kind of classic Super Nintendo games from later in the system's lifespan. Right. So, we're in a town called South Cape, and it's a pretty typical first kind of starting town. It's got a great soundtrack. It's, you know, right on the ocean. And this is the town where our main character, Will, lives. A year ago, Will journeyed with his father and a team of other explorers to a place called the Tower of Babel. His father and the rest of the team disappeared, but Will survived and made his way back to Cape Town, South Cape, and is now kind of looking for his father and needs to figure out what happened to his father. And so him and his friends, they all go to school here in South Cape. These are Seth's parents, and so he's got this little band of kids that he's part of. And I need to go find them. South Cape is one of my... I'm just going to explore a little bit because South Cape is one of my very favorite starting towns in any video game. I just think it's very like tightly designed. I think it has a lot of variety, but also verticality, which I think is really fun and not something you always see in like Super Nintendo games. You know, I love the ability to jump off of buildings, and you know that lady kind of calls you on it, and it just makes it a fun place to kind of poke around. And as you can see, like, you know, we were in the school, all of my friends left through this way, but actually you can, you know, earlier you could see I went up onto the roof, and that's where you find your first save spot, which is these glowing orbs. And as I get closer, here, yeah, you can see it's a glowing orb, and as I get closer, it sort of turns into this doorway, and I head inside to the dark space, and there's this kind of crazy talking head thing. You're in space. It's super funky, and eventually kind of you learn what that's all about. But it's definitely one of, like, you know, as far as save spots go, when in other games, you know, Zelda didn't even have save spots. You know, in Secret of Mana, you saved by going to the inn. Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI had just, you know, glowing dots on the ground or whatever, whereas like Illusion of Gaia has this super crazy dark realm that you go to save. All right, so Seaside Cave here. This is where we hang out, and me and my little gang of kids hangs out, and they play cards, and so they're playing right now. One of the things I really like about Illusion of Gaia, it's kind of subtle, but each of the friends has their own kind of color identity. So you can see Eric has orange writing. You know, Seth has kind of purple writing, Lance has green writing, and that also reflects in their sprite work, which I think is a great little bit of visual design. So the apparently the princess came from Edward Castle, and so that's kind of the rumor, and so now they want to check that out, and they let's see what happened. So they want to go check that out, and that's sort of how our adventure gets started. We'll get over here and sit next to Eric. Okay. So Will can move stuff with his little wand thing, his flute. He has a flute. And so that's one of the kind of main one thing that really sets Illusion of Gaia apart is that it it kind of has a combat system that's, you know, fairly straightforward action RPG combat system, but it also has a heavy focus on puzzle solving in the dungeons. And so Will has a variety of different moves, a moveset that he has. And then he can also eventually get the ability to turn into another character called Friedan, and then later on somebody named Shadow, who has even more abilities, and each of them also have like moves that they can use that affect how you interact with the world, and that works into combat and puzzle solving. And that's, I think, one of the most kind of interesting and defining aspects of Illusion of Gaia from a gameplay perspective. So Will also has psychic powers, which is what his friends were just talking about. And he can move stuff with his wand, which also acts as like a guard button in games, and he can figure out which card is the diamond card and stuff. And I think, if I remember correctly, I didn't read the dialogue too correctly or closely, but I believe that he kind of gained those powers after returning from the Tower of Babel. This is Will's house. There's a pig wrecking the room. This is Hamlet, who is one of the, believe it or not, one of the most tragic characters in all of Japanese RPG history. Oink oink. Poor Hamlet. Poor Hamlet. That's all I've got to say. This is Kara. She is Hamlet's owner, I guess. So Kara is the aforementioned princess. Just kind of wandered into our house and is looking around as one does. So Ullman the Explorer was Will's father, who's of some renown. Will's waiting for him to come back, but he's probably not coming back. So Kara wants to play a piano. Grandma Lola is up here. They're singing opera. Okay. Scream came from downstairs. One thing I think is very notable about Illusion of Gaia as well is its score. I think its soundtrack is very iconic, very underrated in a lot of ways, and gives so much texture and emotion to the game. It has very, very kind of unique and identifiable and well-constructed themes to kind of guide you through, any of the story scenes in the game. And those have always stuck with me as much as any other game on the system. So Kara got dragged off back to the castle. Turns out our grandfather, the guy with the blue hair there, Gramps, he designed the castle. Okay. And there's a dungeon underneath. And he built the prison. And he's feeling bad about it, which fair enough. What kind of castle can be built in a single person's lifespan? I don't know, but they're having pie for dinner, which I'm quite envious of. This is also something that's kind of unique about Illusion of Gaia. Is it's narrated by Will at times, so he kind of gives context to the story and shape and structure to the narrative as things move along. Illusion of Gaia is a very very linear story and game. You move forward in a straight line, and there's not really much going back. There are instances throughout the game where there's a world map that you get to choose your locations, and you kind of have to bounce back and forth from location to location. But as far as kind of forward momentum, as you move forward, there's really only one way to go, and once you start down that path, you're not going backwards. And there's no real reason to go backwards, except that it also has a side quest, an optional side quest, where you collect 50 red gems throughout the game, and they can disappear entirely. And frankly, most first-time players are going to just lose out on that entirely, being able to get all 50, because right here, there's sometimes there's a person who's fishing, and they'll give you a gem, but it's totally random. And so to get that person, you need to go in and out of the cave or get lucky. And if you don't, that's it. Like you don't get another chance later in the game to come back to get it. There's lots of benefits, and there's lots of prizes for getting fewer than 50 gems, but if you get 50, you get to tackle the game's optional dungeon, which has like a really hard end boss. Which I've never actually done because I've never played through and got all 50 gems. So this is the world map. As you can see, it's just, I just choose from a selection of places on a list, and I just automatically go there. It's got a cool Mode 7 effect, and it kind of looks like a paper map, nicely stylized. Here we are at Edward's Castle. And already right off the bat, I think that the game kind of has showed like a lot of visual variety. The castle feels, it feels big and stately and impressive in a way that, South Cape felt homely and comfortable and quiet and slow. And that only extends as you play the game more and more. You just get deeper and deeper into the world, and whether you're kind of plumbing the depths of Angkor Wat or the Great Wall of China and like the pyramids in Egypt, and then other places. There's Incan Ruins and stuff. All you go everywhere, and each place kind of has its own feel, its own look, its own way of navigating. Like the structure of the dungeons changes depending on where you are and what the theme is, and it's great that way. No matter where you are, it feels like exciting to look around and to explore. Just a shabby boy. It's a great description. The the localization on Illusion of Gaia is not good. You might not really notice it right away, like sentence by sentence. It's not like it's not garbled. It's not Breath of Fire 2, for instance. But it also, like, over time, like, it's just translated in a way that is just really loses the story. And so if you're playing through the English version, I feel like the value of, like, the narrative is really in the audiovisual elements and storytelling. So I can go see the king now. The king wanted me to bring something that belonged, I think, to my father. You look so shabby. Well, thank you. I guess that's the word of the day for Will. Did I bring the crystal ring? Yes. Give me the ring. Are you lying to me, young whelp? So either way, you can pick yes, I brought you the ring, or you can say no, you get thrown in jail either way. And above and beyond, like, the narration that Will does, he also does speak, as we just saw. Also, and so that's a little bit different than a lot of other games at the time, especially action RPGs. Like, you have games like Secret of Mana, you have Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, where you have silent protagonists, whereas in this game Will doesn't talk a lot, and he doesn't really drive the narrative forward outside of his narration, but he does talk. I think I just have to... Oh, there we go. I just heard a whisper, and I got some bread. But it's hard. It's the worst thing he's ever tasted. I wonder why. I've played Illusion of Gaia several times at this point, and I really, obviously, I really like it. I've been talking about that. I played a little bit of Soul Blazer last night. Spent about half an hour with it, and it was really interesting because it's a lot more kind of, in a lot of ways, it's a lot more rudimentary, like visually especially. I feel like the controls and the combat isn't as well developed as Illusion of Gaia or Terra Nigma. Like, Terra Nigma takes the combat kind of up a grade even more, whereas Soul Blazers seems quite seems quite basic, but what's really interesting is in Soul Blazer, you're going through these dungeons and you rescue people in the dungeons, and then it rebuilds like an associated village outside of the dungeon, so that becomes more robust and offers more services, and that was pretty cool. And it was kind of fun just seeing like the roots of what really started to define the trilogy throughout Illusion of Gaia and Terra Enigma. Okay, so now Will's feels like his dad is talking to him, and now I can talk back to him. No, I'm not going to do what you asked, or you deserted me, or yes, if it's your wish. We're kind of starting to see the first kind of hints of how melancholy the story is. It can be very very dark in terms of the fact that Will's kind of lost his father, and just continually throughout the story, there's a running theme of like sacrifice and loss. Look at the left-hand wall. Aha. Oh, I got a gem. So up near the top in the middle of the screen, you can see there's like a heart with a 0, and then across from that a 5. As I collect those, the crystals, if I collect 100, then I get 1 heart, and those revive me if I die in a dungeon. So I have to go find the mystic statues. That's what my dad is asking me to do. So first to the Incan Ruins. So I'm in a dungeon. I'm supposed to go to the Incan Ruins now. Oink, oink. Here we go. It is some time until I actually get to the Incan Ruins. But for now, we have to get out of this dungeon. Sorry to hear you're in prison. This is from Kara. And again, like we're coming back to like the kind of color identity for each of the characters with Kara's pink writing. This is one of the most satisfying little jingles in all of Japanese RPGs or Japanese gaming, I think. Whenever you get an item or you solve a problem or whatever, you get that little jingle, and it's just so satisfying. You just feel like you've accomplished so much. This is the status screen. I got there by pressing select. You can see, condition. It'll tell you a bit about Will's different powers, his dark powers, hit points, DP, and stuff like that. And I have items, and these are the only slots that you have. So you have, what is that, 4x4, 16. So you can carry 16 items at a time. You can equip one of them. So I've equipped the key, I think. Did I equip it? And then there's, some things that once you use them, they disappear. But there's also a limited number of healing items in the game. And that can be a big challenge. Because if you, use them all up, or use up too many, by the time you get to the end of the game, you can get stuck at a point where you just, you're kind of up a creek. And that can be a big challenge, and was a big challenge for me when I was a kid playing the game. I don't really understand the game design rationale of having, limited healing items. But I'm also of the mind that that games should be accessible, and experience shouldn't be gated by ability as well. So we've escaped from my cell, and now we're in the dungeon proper. I want to like, and you can combine items. So we're in a dungeon proper, and I've got my flute. I can attack enemies. One of the things I really like about Illusion of Gaia also is that the gameplay and the combat's just really fluid. Like, Will feels really good to just move around and attack. And that's a big upgrade over Soul Blazer, because it has, like, Will can only attack in 4 directions, but it's not grid-based movement. Soul Blazer had grid-based movement. And Terra Enigma, the sequel to Illusion of Gaia, the 3rd game in the trilogy, really kind of ups the ante and makes its main character arc just like really agile. Combat is very fast and satisfying. You'll have noticed when I defeated all the enemies in that last screen, I got a little heart, and it increased my health. And so in each screen of every dungeon, you can see there's a set number of enemies. So in this one, there's 14. And you can see up there it says force. And when you defeat all the enemies in any given like screen in a dungeon, it unleashes like the force, which can be it can increase your attack, it can increase your defense, it can increase your health. And so that's how you kind of grow more powerful over the course of the game. And so yeah, so I mean, it kind of gives you incentive to go through the dungeons quite thoroughly. There are some instances where if you don't know the dungeon, you know, like very well, you can be searching for that last final enemy for a long time. But I was also watching some speed runs a couple of months ago, and I was noticing that, like, obviously they weren't battling and defeating every enemy in the dungeons, but by the end of the game, they also ended up with like max health. So I do that made me wonder if maybe like upon beating a dungeon, perhaps you just get all of the stat upgrades. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But it is kind of, you know, an interesting kind of growth mechanic in a game like this, because it encourages exploration and sort of like threat assessment over just pure grinding. In other games, you know, you're just gonna either avoid enemies, like in Zelda, like, you know, by a certain point, you're just avoiding all the enemies. There's no benefit to fighting them because you have, you know, you have maxed out rupees, and you don't really get anything from fighting them. Other ones, you're grinding away experience, and so you're just like mindlessly fighting enemies over and over and over again. Whereas this game, like, you know, rewards exploration. You need to go through the dungeons, find all the different enemies, defeat them, so that you can grow, stronger. I'm actually getting kind of low on health. I need to be a little more careful. I can use this move, where I can draw things forward. It's also a defensive move that'll block projectile attacks. You can keep track, of course, of how many enemies are left in any given scene, because there's a map. And so I can see that there's 4, and I can kind of roughly see where they are. It's like a radar style map. So I know there's this skeleton, I know there's this snake thing, and then and I found an herb. So that's one of the so the herbs are the healing items in the game. And again, there's a limited number. So once you use those up, like, you only get to heal outside of save spots so many times in a playthrough, and if you don't, you're in trouble. So you really want to save them for situations where you're in dire need of some help. And I think coming up in just a moment, we're actually going to get access to another, like, character, sort of. So as part of Will's dark powers, he's actually able to, like, take on the form of other people or other warriors, and so he then gets the power of well, we'll see in a second. So that, this won't go in. Maybe it's rusty. So this is kind of the first little puzzle, I guess, in the game coming up here, and we're going to see what that looks like. That's an important one because I need to heal up here. So I can jump down from above, and that kind of like helps push the button. And I found a red jewel. So again, those are the those are the jewels that you're collecting to give back to the jeweler, who will give you prizes based on like as you hit certain thresholds. There's 50 of them in the game, and some of the rewards are pretty good. They're new like skills, abilities that you can use in combat and stuff. And if you find all 50, you can go to the secret dungeon. As for this, like already in this playthrough, I've missed one, so I can't go to the dungeon anymore. The secret dungeon, but I wasn't really planning on that anyway. When you defeat the enemies, a shiny silver dark gem will appear. If you collect 100 of them, you gain 1 life. Even if you're defeated, you won't have to go back very far. And so, like, when you are defeated, and if you have the lives, you go back, I think, to the beginning of the room. You are not, as far as I can remember, revived at full health. And so you can get into a real slippery slope where you're, you struggle to, especially against bosses, which really hit hard. And you just end up with like, oh, here we go. I didn't have 100, so is that just game over? Yeah, I'm back at the beginning of the prison, and I lost all of my dark gems. But that's okay, because I can make my way through that dungeon fairly quickly, because all the enemies are going to be... Oh, no, they're back. I lost all that progress. Okay, no, so that's interesting. The enemies are back, but I do have like all my stat gains, which is good, because that means now I don't have to go out of my way to fight all the enemies. And so I'm going to be able to get back to where I died quite quickly. As you can see, Will has a sprint ability that's very handy, because he goes quite a bit faster. And you will probably use it quite a bit later in the game in some of the other dungeons that are, very labyrinthine, and you're running around looking for where to go for quite a while. There's one dungeon called MU, where I always get lost no matter how many times I've played the game. The Incan Ruins as well. I always seem to get lost, and so you're running around endlessly sort of looking for that one last spot where you haven't quite checked out yet. Oh shoot, I need to... So I need to actually go back and defeat some of these enemies so that I can get that force power. There's no boss in this dungeon, so it's so you're not kind of up against the ropes, as long as you don't die against the regular enemies like I did. But I'd still like those stat gains. Okay, excellent. Aha, no, there was these two. One other thing that, like, and we won't get to it on this playthrough, but like, there's a lot of, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but a lot of kind of darkness and like a theme of loss and regret and sacrifice in this game. And even starting like, pretty much after this dungeon, like, I mean, Will's already been thrown in a dungeon by a corrupt king, and has, his dead father is asking him to help save the world and stuff. But you get into like later in the game, there's like a ghost village where you have this kind of like lost village of people that you have to save, and then like you get to the scene with, Hamlet on the boat, and Hamlet in the village, where Hamlet, again, most tragic character in Japanese RPGs, but you also have instances where you have places like the diamond mine, which touch on some pretty kind of high level and dark storylines about slavery and stuff like that. And the game kind of constantly surprises you with the directions it goes. Okay, so there's a flower in the corner. It says try playing the flute. If you've ever played Terranigma, that little flower is kind of familiar. So I play the tune I learned from Lola. So throughout the game, you kind of get new melodies, tunes that you can play on your flute, and I mean, they are what they are. You just use them at the appropriate time. But I feel like the melodies that you play are really interesting, and you can kind of hear sort of that melancholy tone that I talk about a lot when I talk about this game. No. Okay. So, strange voice. The door won't open unless you push on the switch on the count of 3. When I shout, push the switch. I'll count 1, 2, 3. Don't make a mistake. There we go. That's weird because that's like the only time in the game there's anything like that. But again, you're seeing, like just basic puzzle solving. And later in the game, you get kind of more complex puzzle solving, but it's mostly, like things like that, manipulating the environment. And some of the dungeons have a lot of back and forth as you're kind of like, opening new paths and creating new pathways and stuff so that you can access deeper parts of the dungeon and stuff. As you can kind of tell, because I've already died once in this playthrough, damage mitigation is really important in this game. And again, because there's only so many of the herbs and healing that can occur. You get healed up at these safe spots, so you want to, you're often backtracking to get healed up. But as much damage as you can mitigate by either defeating enemies quicker, or using your blocks and stuff, is really important. Now we're in this dark space, and in addition to the big weird head that saves my game, there's also Friedan. So this is a new statue, and this is like an ancient warrior. I am Friedan. I am eternal. Let me help you on your journey. So Will sort of like transforms into Friedan, and Friedan is like a lot stronger in combat. A bit less agile than Will, but a lot stronger in combat. And he has some tricks of his own and different abilities he can use to solve dungeons or to solve puzzles in dungeons. But right now, I'm interested in his stronger combat abilities. But one of these is he can he's just got longer reach. That's what it is. So like Will couldn't hit that. Later on, he gets the ability to like run fast, and so he can go over jumps, which is helpful. And he gets this cool move where he can like jump off of high places, and like he plants his sword in the ground, and it's fun. He just looks cool too. Like as a kid playing this game, I just like Friedan was just sweet. Like like a big beefy warrior with a huge sword, and he's so much bigger than Will. Just made him fun to play as, and he makes combat a lot easier because his reach is so much stronger and he does so much more damage. Let me go back and check this way. I think we're almost at the end of this dungeon. And that's going to be a pretty good time, I think, to wrap up. But we'll see how this goes. So another red jewel. You're always happy to get a red jewel in this game. And so Gem, the jeweler, he appears in like every kind of settlement, like every town you go to. But he looks different every time. So you kind of have to go around talking to all the villagers and stuff to see which one he is, which one's Gem. So now that I'm done the dungeon, Will turn back into his original form, and we kind of lose Friedan for now. So this is Lily. She's from Italy, which is one of my favorite locations in the game. The Lily can change her form. That's part of like what her villagers can do, which is cool. And so here we are in the the basement of the castle where I was earlier in the game, but I couldn't get this deep in. So I gonna go rescue Kara from her from the king, take her on an adventure. Kara actually ends up being one of my favorite characters in the game. She's very headstrong and just interesting. Has interesting development over the course of the game. You know, like she starts off as a kind of spoiled princess, like literally a spoiled princess, with a pig, and over the course of the game, you kind of see a lot of strength come out of her, and she changes a lot, and she provides a lot of kind of motivation and drive for the group of kids. Gotta go back to the cellar to get some food. I think some food is put in one of these barrels. You saw me checking the barrels earlier, and I couldn't remember if I could get the food right, like the first time around or not. Ah, there's that jingle again. I love it. I think it's a great jingle. It's fun. Just satisfying. Makes you feel like you did something good. You got a yummy roast leg of yak. So they're just gonna carry around a big yak leg, munch on it when they're hungry. All right. Can't remember it. Is that? Yeah, it's an actual item in my inventory even. Yak leg. Which is just great. And so I can't at this point actually choose where I want to go. It's just taking me right back to South Cape. Maybe I could get that other gem or a red jewel for gem at this point that I missed earlier, but can't remember for sure. Yeah, Will's house has been ransacked and his grandparents are gone, and so this kind of like this takes him away from South Cape and sort of really sets off its adventure. So the Jackal is like a recurring character throughout the game. I don't know. Yeah, I guess you do see him. I can't remember. But he's basically like a slave trader who is kind of a side villain throughout the game. So Lily and Kara are sort of butting heads a little bit. Lily is also great. I don't remember. No, I can't actually leave yet. I actually think that this is a pretty good place to stop the game. After this, I go with Lily to her village, and then you kind of get into the first like real major dungeon in the game. And like I was saying, Illusion of Gaia is very linear. Like you go town dungeon, and then there are some kind of narrative scenes and stuff throughout. It's kind of some interesting, interesting structural narrative bits. Like you get on this gold ship that has kind of a tragic backstory and stuff like that. It's really interesting, and it has a good story to tell. If it doesn't tell it in the best way, thanks to its like mediocre or bad localization, like it's unfortunate, but there's just so much to like, and it's such it's a quick, breezy game to play through as well. I think a playthrough generally takes me 10 or 11 hours. So it's pretty quick, and you get just a lot of content and a lot of variety throughout the game over that period of time, and it's just gorgeous. Like, it's worth playing just to kind of explore a beautiful, bright, vibrant pixel art world for 10 hours. And I recommend it for that and for the soundtrack. Like, just go in wanting to experience those two things, and I think you'll find a game that you really like. I think Illusion of Gaia isn't quite held up with the tier of other like great Super Nintendo RPGs and action RPGs, but I think it deserves to be, and it certainly has a really kind of special place in my heart. So yeah, this has been a lot of fun. It's been fun revisiting this with you. I can't wait to write about it in Late to the Party, which is part of my newsletter, Astrolabe. Again, it has a new URL, new home. You can find it at astrolabe.aidenmoher.com. Comes out roughly every 2 weeks or so. This next one's coming out on Monday, so it's going to feature Illusion of Gaia, and I have a really, really awesome interview with Matt Wallace, who's a science fiction and fantasy writer who just put out his first middle grade book. So I talked to him about what it was like to jump from writing sort of like big epic fantasy for adults to writing about wrestling and growing up for kids. And Matt's a brilliant guy. It's a brilliant interview. It's always a pleasure to get to work with him, and I think people are really going to like that. And I've also got another great book review as well, which I think people will like. So if you're into retro video games, or you're into fantasy books, science fiction, geekdom at large, I think you're really going to like Astrolabe. It's free to sign up for. There's an option to get a paid membership for $5 a month. So that's a great way as well to support further streams and kind of more content creation. But otherwise, I appreciate everybody who stopped by today. There's going to be a VOD, an archive version of this going up on YouTube as well. You can get to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/AidenMoher. I have a whole bunch of other Late to the Party streams. And I also do another series called Let's Play Chrono Trigger, where I'm playing through Chrono Trigger, one chunk at a time. It's my favorite game ever. I'm working on a book about the history of Japanese RPGs, and so I've been playing a lot of them recently, and Chrono Trigger is always a delight to return to. And you can find that series on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/AidenMoher. We're about probably 2/3 of the way through the game. We're doing some side quests now, so join me for that. And otherwise, have an awesome day, and I'll catch up to you next Tuesday for the next Let's Play Chrono Trigger stream. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.